Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's our pleasure to bring onto the stage one of our nation's most distinguished, dedicated public servants, Joe Biden. Joe Biden has spent 36 years representing Delaware in the United States Senate, where he made it the cause of his life to expand economic opportunity across this country. And it's work that Joe Biden has continued as vice president. Indeed, President Obama tasked him to head up the White House Task Force on Working Families, where he ensures that policymakers and members of the cabinet and the staff are focused on job creation and rebuilding America's middle class. Joe Biden understands the issues, the worries, the dreams, and the aspirations of working families and small businesses and organizations across America. He is a person who is relentless in getting us in the federal government to be more productive, more efficient, and to focus on the challenges of America. He's one of the President's most trusted advisors, and we are indeed honored to have him here with us. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome the Vice President of the United States of America, Joe Biden.
Thank you very, very much. Fortunately, all of you on this side of the room could not see what this side of the room saw. Gary, Mr. Secretary, when you said Joe Biden, I apologize, no speaker should ever start this way by apologizing for being late, but it's one of the drawbacks of not being president. The boss says stick, you stick, as you said, I came rushing in, knowing I was late, and all I could hear you say was Joe Biden, and I opened the curtain, and I realized I wasn't supposed to step out. I felt like the Wizard of Oz back there. I told the governor earlier, I tell all of you, I tried very hard for a while there to become the nominee. And by the way, I'd say retrospectively, if I'd known how good this guy was, I would have joined earlier. I just wouldn't have fooled around. But I often wondered, we'd be behind a curtain like that during the campaign and the nomination, and someone would say, and here's Joe Biden. Well, when I joined the ticket, there's formal folks back there with microphones, and they'll say, now you're going to be introduced by the voice of God. I had Harry Smith introducing me, or Charlie Jones. Barack always had the voice of God introducing him. So now I realize why it wasn't even a race. But folks, all kidding aside, I truly apologize for keeping you waiting, because this is an important lunch. It's an important occasion, and it's not really excusable for me to be late for so many important people and the honorees. I understand Senator Klobuchar is here, or at least was. Amy, if you're here, good to see you. And the Board of Overseers, the Baldrige Foundation, the American Society for Quality, and the Baldrige team at the National Institute of Standards and Technology. I acknowledge all of you and thank you all for all that you've done. During my Senate career, I had the pleasure of knowing, which is really going to date me, 16 Secretaries of Commerce. And I'm telling you, Mac was clearly one of the most memorable that I have ever met in my 37-year career. Then again, it's pretty hard to forget a cabinet member inducted into the Cowboys Hall of Fame, who was once named the Professional Rodeo Man of the Year. And I'm so pleased that I'm told Mac's nephew is with us. Malcolm, are you here? There you go. How are you doing, Malcolm? Malcolm Holsteiner. If my dad were alive, he'd look at you and he'd say, "Kid, you got good blood. You've got good blood." After Mac's untimely death, I was proud to support the Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Improvement Act when I was a United States Senator. That legislation passed way back in August of 1987 and was born of the realization that America's competitors were, and I might argue for the first time, at least in the last century, for the first time, beginning to outpace us, especially in the area of manufacturing and industry. Quite simply, it was clear, and this was Mac's sort of drumbeat, we had to do better. We had to do a lot better. And our economic future depended on it. And I would argue it still does. Mac's vision of this award's recognition helped us refocus on the future, on quality, on performance, and most importantly, maybe, on innovation. Now, here we are, 22 years later, and again at an economic crossroads for this great nation, again channeling Mac's spirit and his vision, and again looking toward innovators in order to strengthen our economy. And that's why President Obama and I are so proud to honor the hard-working men and women of Cargill, who I just got a chance to meet, and Poudre Valley Health Systems, as well as a school system. Think about this. Here we're talking about, Iredell-Statesville School District, and they're being honored today. But when you know, and you do know what they've done, what all of them have done, you understand why it's so important. Because they've made real changes. Cargill Milling North America saw earnings nearly triple between 2003 and 2007, and in the process maintained an impeccable error-free delivery rate throughout. But what makes so many people so proud, and speaking for myself, so proud of Cargill, is their model response to the devastating floods in Cedar Rapids last year, floods which I witnessed and saw the devastation. It's hard for people to believe unless you actually physically saw it. What happened? The response from Cargill was that they engaged the entire community, and they treated their employees with a kind of dignity that should be a norm, but unfortunately these days sometimes is an exception. Always treating their employees with dignity. And am I pronouncing right, Iredell? Iredell. You think as an Irishman I'd get that right. The Iredell-Statesville Schools, our second winner. You guys looked at a low budget that you were faced with and limited resources and said, we're going to do the best anyway. We're not going to use it as an excuse as to why we can't get better. You transformed your district's culture. That's how I see it, the entire culture of your district. I'm married to an educator, have been for the last 35 years. She's been teaching all that time. And she always talks about the culture. It's a phrase that she uses, the culture of the school system, the culture of the district, the culture of the school. Well, you literally transform the district's culture from one that focuses on teaching to one that focused on learning. You raised graduation rates, proficiency scores, attendance, as well as morale. And you became a model for the 21st century public school systems that we need throughout this country. And as for the third winner, it's pronounced Poudre, right? Poudre. What am I getting? There's nothing wrong with me. You can call me Bidden. It's okay. I often get called Bidden. The Poudre Valley Health System is amazing. You know, what they've done is no surprise, except it is not the norm. It's no surprise that both your patient loyalty and physician satisfaction ranks in the top 1% of the nationwide of all the hospitals in America. That's pretty impressive. You've revolutionized healthcare, and that's because you get that the reason people enter your industry in the first place is to help others. It sounds so basic, but the truth of the matter is the motivating factor for most people being involved in healthcare is the same reason, the motivating factor why people become firemen or policemen. They actually are engaged in it, notwithstanding what remuneration may flow from it, because they really are moved by the notion that they can actually help people. And it seems surprising to me, and so self-evident now that you've done it, that it is not recognized. When you appeal to that piece that piece of what motivates people to get involved in the first place, you can change. You know, when Aristotle wrote, excellence is not an act, but a habit, I think he had these three guys and their outfits in mind. Or they say he could have. The truth of the matter is that while others were asking what has been done, you were wondering what hasn't been done and what can we do. You know, where others were settling for good enough, you three were aiming and your outfits were aiming at world class. Good enough wasn't good enough. And while others were buffeted by the winds of change, you harnessed those winds of change, improving, inventing, and innovating for a new century in a new world. Gary, the secretary, has heard me say this before. One of my favorite Irish poets is William Butler Yeats, and he wrote about his Ireland in a poem called Easter Sunday, 1916. And there's a verse in there, a line in there that better describes where we are today than it did his Ireland in 1916. He said, all's changed utterly. A terrible beauty has been born. Most people in business and in their personal life face that realization with a sense of dread and a sense of foreboding. You all faced it with a sense of opportunity. You decided things got to change, and you embraced it. And so for me, it comes down to a habit, an attitude, a habit of seeking excellence, a habit of seeking innovation, a habit of being willing to take chances. And you've applied that to everything you've done in three totally different areas. So what makes your achievements today doubly impressive in my view is that you're re-examining the past and the present. You haven't decided to settle. You decided we're able to do something fundamentally different, even though people have been trying in each of your areas at this for a long while. You know, the fact is that what you've done is you've begun to set a standard and help America reclaim its future. So I want to thank each one of you for all the work you've done and what I expect a heck of a lot more you're about to do, you're going to continue to do. And I want to thank you for your example. As you know, President Obama and I will be hosting a White House Jobs Summit tomorrow with leaders from American businesses, both large and small. And I literally, not figuratively, will be taking your stories of success in these three critical sectors: manufacturing, healthcare, and education. Taking it to that conference, taking it when I go. And I hope that your stories can inspire a new chapter in the America story. Over the past 3 years, I've had the opportunity to travel all across America. And often I was literally on a bus going through small and medium-sized towns in the South and the Midwest and throughout the country. And on that bus, I was usually accompanied by a local official, Democrat or Republican, someone, the town manager, the local representatives. And as we passed in the bus, and I mean this in a literal sense, I'm not being figurative, they'd point out the window and they'd point to a local landmark. And the commentary was almost always the same. They'd say to me, you know, Senator, that used to be a steel mill employing 2,000 people. That used to be, our town used to be the ceramic capital of the world. That factory used to employ 1,200 folks. That company used to have their headquarters right there in our town. That's what I heard. That used to be. Literally, not figuratively. And it didn't matter whether I was in central Ohio or in South Carolina, in rural South Carolina. It was always, that used to be. But I still travel the country. I've been in God knows how many states in the last 10 months and how many cities. But I'm hearing a different refrain now, literally, not figuratively. The same officials, in effect, the same people doing the same kind of jobs, the people I rode with a year ago. It always starts off with, you see that over there, Mr. Vice President? That's going to be. That's going to be a factory that builds the next generation of automobiles. That's going to be the hub of a new smart grid for the nation. That rundown old plant, that's going to be an oasis of affordable housing and decent housing to raise the standard of living in this neighborhood and the safety quotient. That corn mill is going to be a model of community engagement and manufacturing excellence. That hospital isn't going to lay off any more decent men and women. It's going to be providing the best health care in the region. That school isn't going to close. It's not going to close. It's going to be a model for writing the success stories of tomorrow while employing top-notch educators today and encouraging learning. Folks, you know better than I do. An economy has never been rebuilt in a day or even in a year. And we got a lot of rebuilding to do. Without casting blame or aspersions on anybody, we've ignored an awful lot of things for the past 20 years, and particularly the past 8 years, in my view. It's going to take time. But you've helped show us the path forward as how to begin to rebuild this economy. And so on behalf of the President of the United States, I want to congratulate each and every one of you and all of you in the audience for participating in this. You all made us proud. This organization makes us proud. You made America proud. And with the grace of God, as my grandfather would say, in the goodwill of the neighbors, and a whole lot more hard work, and the willingness to talk about this is going to be rather than what used to be, I think we're on the road to rebuilding an economy that is not based on any bubbles, that is not based upon any ephemeral choices we made, but based on serious, solid foundations that grow out of a healthcare system, an education system, and a manufacturing base that's real and innovative. So all I can say is God bless you all, keep it up, and may God protect our troops. Thank you very, very much. The problem is, guys,